All right, welcome everybody to the UDR podcast. Today we have Jesse P. I'm super excited here today. Jesse and Bill a few years back really dove into the book, and so Jesse, what drove you into the book so hard? What brought that on at that time?
That's a good question, Tommy, and thanks for allowing me to join you guys, both Tommy and Bill. Where it started for me is I came to the program this time around with no answers. And that was the clear difference from all the other times I had been around. Was I thought I had the answers. So I'd sit in a chair, very smug, very cool, and then every time I left, just as confused as the last time I left. So in coming around this time around, alcoholism really had manifested in various ways in my own life, and I was kind of acting that out for the good portion of a year or so. And then by the time I came back, I understood two fundamental things. I had two bottoms. One was in regards to the drink, and the other was in regards to self. And in having that second bottom, that's where I started understanding step 3 and the real need for God. After these experiences of just straight pain, like I'm talking like on the operating table without an anesthetic pain. That's where the book unlocked. That's where the book itself, it was no longer black and white. All of it was true for me. At least that's how I felt, with a very heavy earnestness. And being able to look at the book from that point of view, and I know Bill has that point of view as well, that's where we were able to find all these things. That's where really I was able to start making connections.
Yeah, because like in my case, it was I had to have someone show me what was going on through the book. But it seems like you guys were actually driven to the book and figure it out, just the two of you, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, yeah, and like when I first met Jesse, I actually didn't like him. I thought he was a pompous prick, wearing his suits and his fancy cars, and listening to him, and we didn't really vibe together. But through Jesse went back out, I stayed, but I wasn't emotionally sober at all. We had some type of connection somewhere along the way. I believe another buddy of mine and Jesse were at a meeting, and it was a midnight meeting, and we sat outside the meeting and chatted one day, and then we exchanged numbers, and then we started a bit of a friendship, and it just kind of started really weird. But anyway, it grew and grew, and then Jesse finally came back in, and then we started hanging out, and we started becoming buds. But then we went out of town working, and my defects of character were fucking in full rampage. And I didn't understand the disease of alcoholism. I just thought I had a substance problem, that was it. But I didn't realize I had a self problem. And I was self-seeking fucking to the nines. And this guy's watching me burn my life down with defects of character, and it looked like he had his shit together. But then as we kept working together, I'm acting out in my defects, fucking being an idiot, thinking that I'm being better, not really realizing alcoholism has manifested itself in other ways. And then my buddy jumps off the defect of character cliff right in front of my eyes. And I'd never seen anything like this, right? I'd never seen anyone jump off a cliff of defect of character and go down so fast like he did. And then that was like the catalyst of us opening the book. And I don't know where we started, but I'm pretty sure it was step 6. And we just started dissecting every single line. And we had read it before, but we never fucking read it. We started looking at every line and going, okay, this is me, this is you. And we'd share exactly what it was. And it was just mind-blowing to see how subtle and how that book was me, and it still is every day. So yeah, we were driven, bro, to sheer fucking pain, and not from the substance and not the physical pain, but the physical pain of fucking anxiety and fear and depression and all of this shit. And we just sought another way, and And that's how we got started.
That's interesting, because usually people, when they're going through that type of pain, they're gonna reach out to someone. But it seems like you guys just were together and then you reached into the book. But I'm interested to hear about this off the cliff moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, like I didn't know what I know now. There was actually other underlying addictions that were never kept in check. So along with alcohol, there's a long laundry list of things that I get myself into. And all that is truthfully, alcoholism manifesting in various ways. But what happens is that when it manifests, is it locks right into what it says in the book, the relapse cycle for me. So it is restless, irritable discontent. Then all of a sudden the mental obsession comes on. Then I pick up the drink or the drug or whatever. The phenomenon of craving kicks in, I'm in a spree. And I could be in a spree for a couple of months, and that's what happened. I didn't know that. I thought that was just subjected to alcohol. I didn't know that it translates to anything, gambling, etc., etc. So that's what had happened, was that Bill was burning his hand, left and right, just kept on burning his hand. And I loved it. I thought it was the funniest shit around. Until it bit me, right? The difference between me and Bill is he kept the job, I lost the job. I lost absolutely everything. And, I wish big sob story because I lost everything. Bro, that's how it goes. Mm-hmm. And it goes quick, very quick. The problem is, like we were chatting before and we were talking about a guy, who's getting into relapse, and after some time, maybe he might have a couple of months and he drinks, and then a couple of months and he drinks, maybe a month and a couple of weeks, whatever. For me, when I burn my hand, it goes very quick now. I had time where I could keep it together for maybe a couple of years or a year or so. That time's now done. So if I am to screw up, it happens, and it happens flash quick. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm on top of the world and then I'm homeless, showering at the Talisman Center, sleeping out of a car. And just that did happen. So...
And that was strictly defects of character.
The real question is how did myself and Bill stay sober through that time? That's the real question. Because the thing is I've seen a ton of guys do what me and Bill have done. And it always ends up in a drink. Mm-hmm. Always drink or a drug, or these guys are dead. Always. Me and Bill had each other, in some aspects, but me and Bill actually kept some fundamental things in line. One of those things is sponsorship. We still sponsored a good amount of guys throughout that process. Not to say that those guys kept us in check. The physical body of the man kept us in check. That I don't believe that that's true, but I believe the relationship with God through that process was there. So God was still there, although we were self-will run riot. Mm-hmm. Most extreme example, the original manuscript says, and just that did happen. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I am living out of my car. I'm eating McDoubles. That's all I could afford, these types of things. But I'm putting $5 in the gas tank and I'm sponsoring 12, 15 guys. Mm-hmm. I had nothing better to do anyways, right? And that, I mean, out of that pain, out of that sheer pain, living in the car and all these other things, and Bill burnt his hand pretty good. That's where I was motivated. Out of the pain comes the motivation. Mm-hmm. Also comes the clarity. I believe in some cultures, they believe that which is closer to death is closer to God. Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that in many respects. This is why alcoholics can have moments of clarity, right? Mm-hmm. Being, on the street and absolutely down and out, last gaspers, they call them. They could have these moments of clarity. I believe I did have multiple moments of clarity throughout that time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Because it's funny because it's hard for me to grasp, actually, because... I don't think there was through all my pain when I actually asked Bill for help, because I was suffering from defects. Anxiety was it was just running rampant, and I couldn't figure out why. But it never occurred to me to, even though I'd been in the program in and out for 10 years, it never occurred to me to actually pick up the book and look for the solution in there. It didn't occur to me to actually look a little deeper. But I reached out to Bill, and that's what happened. But I think it's just a cool story that you guys took it upon yourself to actually figure out more on your own, rather than. And do you think God had a hand in that?
Oh, fucking totally.
Yeah.
Like Jesse and I both were sponsored by men who were big book guys, but they weren't big book guys like we are today. They took us through the book and they showed us the solution, and they got us sober and removed us from the substance. But they didn't show us the deep layers of what the book was. They never... I don't remember my sponsor a lot talking about defects of character. Yes, we had some discussions when I was in pain, and I'd go there and bitch about this and that, you know, and he'd kind of give me a bit of a tongue lashing and say, you know, you're kind of missing the fucking boat here. But we didn't go into anything. And I believe, I can't even remember what happened when me and Jesse started opening the book, but I know I was burning my hand left and right, and he was watching, just taking notes, collecting data, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was just living life, but didn't really know what I was fucking doing. And then something happened along the way, and there was just so much pain, and I think it was in Regina when we first opened it, and we sat in the truck. We were supposed to go to work. We sat in the fucking truck and started reading about step 4 and about step 6, and we just started relating, and fucking, I don't know what took us that way. I don't know what bonked us on the head and said go into the book, but something did. And as we started exploring the literature and really pulling it apart into our own lives, it started like giving me some relief. I started getting some relief, and I started getting the clarity, and I started coming out of the fog with some areas, and I needed it, man, because like Jesse said, it talks about in the step 6, delay is dangerous and rebellion may be fatal. And if I don't look at these serious character flaws, I'm going to be fucking drunk and they will kill me. Jesse had just talked about these people end up dying, right? Mm-hmm. Selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of the trouble. We must be rid of it or it kills us. And like I see this happen every day with people. But it doesn't look like alcoholism's killing them. It looks like they died in a car crash, mm-hmm. or they just died of an overdose. Mm. But it doesn't look like selfish self-centeredness is killing these people, but it actually is. And when you kind of get into depths of what we're talking about, it really exposes selfish self-centeredness. And as our relationship has grown, the selfish self-centeredness has really come to the surface, and that's what this is really all about, right? And it's not about motive. It's always about, it's not about intention. It's always about motive, because my intentions were always good. I never wanted to hurt people. I never wanted to hurt myself, but I couldn't see the underlying self-seeking, self-pity, self-delusion. Mm-hmm. And I'm just so grateful that he is my buddy and that we grew in this together, because, I was scared for Jesse. When he jumped off the cliff and he was in his car and he was sponsoring and he was showering at the Talisman Center, and we stayed in touch, and I was asking him what he was up to, still acting out in a spree, but somehow holding on to a thread. And then finally he got through it, and then we grew a little bit more, and it's a process, right? Most people don't grow through that. They fucking go the other way and
right.
They're drunk.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's like a really good example of going to any length to get it. I don't think I've ever heard that in my life. Anybody, living in their car and showering at the Talisman Center before they drink. You know what I mean?
Well, like me and Bill, because we drove to Regina Monday we would drive up, and Friday we would drive back. So we had about 7 to 9 empty hours. And so what we did is we started going, we started in the 6 and the 7. And this is why the 6 and the 7 is so important to Bill, because he understands it. Mm-hmm. Like, the book talks about a gut level concession in the innermost self for the step 1 to actually be step 1, right? So what if you have the step 1, but then you also have a gut level concession on the 6 and 7, the defective character, and just that happened to me and Bill. Okay. Right? Yeah. So once you understand that, then that's for, at least in my case, this whole thing opened up. Like I shouldn't have stayed sober. I mean, if you look at the story on paper, it's fucking impossible. Mm-hmm. It's very, very difficult to do. But in coming out of that, sleeping in the car, all this other stuff, like I understood that I had the gut level concession on the defective character. The problem is, though, is that, like when we talk about the world of the material, especially in my case, the world of the material always kept me from God, right? So when I first came in here, it was a Cadillac Sedan DeVille d'Elegance, right, 1976. But that was the blockade between me and God. I got rid of that car. I was able to get sober of the substance. Then what happened was that it was a woman. By the time it was time to work on the defective character, I got rid of that woman. I was actually able to walk into this process. When it comes to the manifestation of this and the selfishness, Bill's talking about self. It is the absence of self, right? Like this can manifest in me. I see it in guys manifest in one of two things. It'll either be the opposite sex or it'll be in work, pomp and I can't think of it. But anyway, so that seems to be where it manifests in these guys. That's where it manifested in me at first. And then, that's kind of lost my train of thought.
It's all good. We can always just edit.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's easy to take a pause. No worries. Let me just see here. No, I've lost mine. So where were we at? You were talking about...
Well, we're talking about step 6. There's a lot of points that Bill said that I really liked. But I kind of lost it as I dipped into the story because the odds of me talking about my personal story very rarely ever happens. So...
Okay.
So because we're dipping so much into the personal story, I'm losing a lot of my train of thought on the actual material.
Okay, so I guess one thing that, because I always love hearing Jesse speak about his sponsees because it's pure comedy. So yeah, I mean, let's talk about the defects of character and kind of what you see the most common thing happen with a guy that's gung-ho at the beginning and then kind of takes his foot off the gas.
Well, the biggest thing's pride reasserting itself, right? So, when me and Bill are looking at the defective character, it comes out in the 7 deadly sins. So if we take you all the way back to step 4 resentments, it talks about selfishness, right? We take you all the way up to step 10, which is the answer to your 6 and 7, backed with humility in the 7. The selfishness prevails in your defective character, the 7 deadly sins. So for guys, the 12 and 12 talks about pride heading the procession. And no matter what your personality, whether you're aggressive, passive-aggressive, pride will always head the procession. Comes out in different ways though, right? I mean, if you got your passive, it'll come out in, like he's Jesus Christ dying on like a martyr, right? He's dying for everybody's sins, He's taking on the sins of the world. He goes home and pulls out a whip and gives himself 40 lashes. That is how that personality trait goes. But the aggressive, being on the other end of the spectrum, the aggressive all that energy will be dispersed upon everybody. That's how he gets it out. I mean, one internalizes it, the other one is more outward, right? So if you understand that about the guy, then you understand where he's going to go. You have a very good idea where he's going to go. Like, for example, defective character for a passive is envy, right? Where, quite commonly the aggressive will be wrath, right? So as long as you understand that, you kind of know where the guy's going to go. Now, I've had guys pull all sorts of things on me. I don't have that happen as much now, right? When you're a new sponsor, you got to deal with all the nonsense. You got to deal with these guys asking for 20 spots. They think you're a taxi cab. They think you're, their best friend, all that other nonsense. Once you start developing your own, you got some polish around you. You got some experience in sponsoring guys. Then, you're dealing with the special cases, right?
Right.
You're dealing with the guys who, when you leave them, they're holding on to your bumper for dear life because they don't know what they're going to, do for the next 5 hours before they go to the house type of situation. There's one guy that's really got me revved. So, for myself, where I started really getting engaged. Because I'll just tell you flat out, these guys aren't giving me chips of wisdom. It's not, a shaken alcoholic dealing with the tremors. He's not giving me, my hair's not being blown back by the words he's saying, let's just say. What I get out of sponsorship today is sanity. If I keep an IV drip of sponsees, if I sponsor a guy a day or so, that means that the sanity I get out of that experience, I can bring to all avenues of my life. My finance, my career, my relationships, all of that. And I learned that years ago. And that's why I sponsor the amount of guys I sponsor. But in saying that, there's this one guy who he's definitely on death's doors, and he knows it. I mean, we're going through the book and everything's clicking, and that's how I know. You know, there's no point of contention. He's not contesting everything I'm saying. But the delusions in these guys, it's my experience. I've worked with multiple guys who came from meth, right? And meth's one hell of a drug. I mean, $10 a point and you're stoned for like 8 hours, right? It's very hard to get a panhandling guy off the street off that drug. And that's where this guy comes from. But it's my experience that the psychosis can be rectified through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've seen it time and time again. I've also seen when these guys lapse on their program, the psychosis come back. So in chatting with this guy, he's finding it very difficult as we talk. What's fancy and what's real? Like, what is the psychosis and what's not the psychosis? And I got him up to step 4. I dropped him off at the meeting, and we're kind of shooting the breeze a little bit. And he's talking about, you know, the fact that he was possessed, right? He was possessed, right? And you know, through this possession, you know, the mind of the alcoholic and how pride manifests in what they see. And this is for a guy in psychosis or not a guy in psychosis. He tells me this story, how he's walking down the street and he has some bikers, you know, in a gang that he ends up naming that, you know, we're all saluting him as he's walking by. And you got to remember that this guy he's maybe 6 foot, weighs about $110. Right. You know what I mean? Nothing special to look at, but, you know, all the bikers are saluting him and, you know, whatever. And then he hops on the C train, and then there's this one, another gang leader offers him a hat, right? And we're kind of chatting. I said, yeah, so you were possessed by, you know, the devil or whatever the case may be. And he said, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I said, well, do you believe that that's psychosis? And I said a little bit more aggressive than that, right? A little bit snarky, and he agreed with me. And I said, well, you know, is everything else you told me probably a part of that? Probably a part of that delusion? And he said, yeah. And I kind of thought about it afterwards that, you know, like what we see backed by pride, a lot of that dishonesty, how true it is, especially with him, psychosis or not, these are the stories that I hear a lot. These are the stories that I have the ability to pick apart in the 5. And picking apart those stories in particular, I find that is what brings about the most benefit in the 5. That these guys actually, because backed by pride is so fallible, right? One minute you're God, the next minute you're actually a piece of shit. So all through the day, the guy goes through that transition probably like 100 times, man. You know, he's thinking he's God incarnate, right? And then he walks on the bus, he sees somebody he's better than, right? So puffed chest, he feels like the man. And then a guy who's bigger than him or better looking than him, you know, hops on the bus, and then, you know, he's absolutely nothing. And he goes through this all day long. When you can end up taking that away, not really taking it away, really what you're doing is pulling the veil back on that. And then you could get the guy back to a more steady place, sense of self, right? Because really, once he stops buying jeans for you, right? Like, you know, I would always buy these boots or drive this car for you to compliment that car that I'm driving. That's actually what, you know, and a little bit further than that, you know, I was the car. You know, I didn't have much to give you in the way of a personality. So Bill had mentioned me wearing suits. You know, I wore suits to meetings. And I didn't have a job, bro. I didn't have. There's no reason for me to wear that suit, other than I needed that suit. I needed that car. Right. Without that, I was absolutely nothing. I remember my sponsor calling me up, and he says, you know, Jess, you've been out of work for a little bit of time. You got me feeling sorry for you and all this other shit. And he's like, you know, then I realized that you have a fucking Cadillac. He's like, sell the car. And I was devastated. I got off the phone. I'm like, this man doesn't understand. You know what I mean? He doesn't understand. I am the car. When you start taking away, peeling back the world of the material, I mean, your average guy burns it all down to the ground. So his hands are tied to go through this process, right? Character building in the world of the material, character building has to come first. Right? And then out of the character building, you get the material, but then it doesn't have, it's not the final end and aim of life, right? It's a byproduct. Like the car I drive, where I live, and what I do for work is all a byproduct of who I am. It no longer is who I am. So, when it comes to benefiting these guys, some of the things that I mentioned, those are some of the biggest things that I've mentioned. Then these guys actually get jobs that are far out of their reach. They get things and, get into relationships and all these other things that are far out of their reach. But the depth and weight that these relationships or the depth and weight that these material things have in their lives isn't even close to what it was. The hole is actually filled with God, right? The material can no longer fill these holes any longer. But understanding that the material, like the shine wears off, and it always did for me, So I would build the material to put between me and the alcoholic insanity. I've been doing that for years. A lot of guys do that. That's probably the most common thing I see guys. They come in here, they get a couple months, maybe they're in one of the houses, whatever, buy a black on black BMW, of course, $5,000. They end up getting, a woman, maybe they're sponsoring a couple guys, and they truthfully believe that those things will keep them sober.
Right.
And how wrong they are. They couldn't be any more wrong. They're just doing the exact same thing that they were doing the whole time, thinking that they know better this time. It's when the pride reasserts itself.
Right.
And I just want to touch base on that. We talk about the world of the material pillars and the God-centered 12-step pillars. And the pillars of God, essentially, is what the God-centered 12-step pillars are. And through my own experience and through, collecting data and watching other people, live in the world of the material, living in the second delusion in the big book, which I think is the most important delusion to smash. And what does it say? It says, is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest happiness and satisfaction out of this world if he only manages well? And Jesse was talking about, buying jeans for you, buying the car for you. Essentially, we become that thing that you think I am. And I need to live up to that. So for me, I quit drinking at 22 years old. But within a real short time, my disease had manifested itself into workaholism, and I started a business because I looked around the world and go, well, I'm still restless, irritable, discontent. I'm not happy. I'm fucking miserable in many respects. What's the solution? They say this is a free world. It's not a free world. Look what you got to fucking do. I don't got any freedom. And then I looked around and I was like, okay, people with money can do whatever the fuck they want. And I was like, that's what you're going to do. You're going to make money. You're going to get happy because you're going to be able to do whatever you want. So that's what I did. My disease fully manifested itself in self-seeking, selfishness, self-centered fear, and pushed me in a way where I started making money. And I built a business. I had my logo on all these trucks, and I was all over town. And I was built on who you thought I was. I got a house, I had a bank account, I had all these things, and then I had friends, the fair weather friends that supported me. And I thought, I always thought I was a little superior to them because they would always ask me for help because I had all these things and I had the money, I had the resources, it looked like. And then as these things, they quit working. Jesse talked about the shine wears off. Fuck, I could go buy a brand new $80,000 Dodge Laramie 3500 and fucking 2 months later, it's just a fucking truck.
It's because it's a Dodge.
But it's just a truck, right? I remember buying my house. I'd never owned a house before. What did I buy? The biggest, nicest house that I ever saw. First house.
Yeah.
Right? And I got a lot of relief from that. But all I ever get from any of this stuff is relief. And it's short-lived. Some of it lasts a little longer. Some of it lasts very short. And part of this manifestation is goals and accomplishments. I can go for this goal, which is actually the defect of character of my insecurity of self, and I want to look better, so I achieve this goal. So you all and I think that I'm this thing and I'm better. But then that wears off too, and I got to set another goal. Never is there enough of what we thought we wanted. There's never enough, and it was never going to be enough, right? And then that quit working. After 13 years. That quit working, and then I was restless, irritable, discontent, and I didn't know what to do. And then I was like, by circumstance, I ended up having a hoot of crack, looking for my brother out in Winnipeg. And it set off the craving, but it was the ease and comfort that I needed on this next go-round. Alcohol worked for a while, quit working. Workaholism and world of the material worked for a while, quit working. Well, now crack works. Worked fucking great. Launched me into the fourth dimension. And then it quit working. But the thing about crack and hard drugs is they fucking take you down heavy and hard. Alcohol can beat you over a state of years and years and really make you feel terrible inside, where drugs can do that in a short time. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I was left, I lost my business, I lost everything material, I lost the family. The only real sense of actual ease and comfort that I really got was out of my family. And that was long lasting. But because I was so selfish and blocked, I couldn't see that. But once I lost all of my material, I was left in the pile of the rubble of what I thought was my life. And I wasn't being held up by the world of the material anymore, because it's fallible. It's built on pride and it crumbles. And then I'm sitting in it going, who the fuck am I? Because now everything I thought I was, that I tried to show you who I was, it's no longer there. And now I'm fucking broken and I don't know who I am. Which ended up being one of the greatest gifts I ever received in my life, because it brought me to the starting point of recovery. And we talk about recovery in removal of substance, but recovery is actually, the definition is, becoming better from an illness. Well, my illness is a spiritual malady, and I need to become better from the spiritual malady, and it's a daily thing. I can get a few days, with maybe not doing work at the point I'm at now, but it's not going to last. So what I've learned is character building, spiritual values. The program has taught me how to fucking become true to who I am. It taught me to live with integrity and honesty and some of these real gifts. And what's happened? It's brought people like you to me, and I don't need that stuff that used to make me me. I know who I am now today. So I'm not held up, and life can crumble all around me, and I don't fall and sit in the pile of the rubble anymore. I get picked up by guys like you, and I'm picked up and I'm held up by the pillars of the fellowship of the Spirit. And it's a huge difference, right? I used to seek my happiness and fill the void inside of me from all the shit outside of me. Spent my whole life looking to fill the hole inside of me with shit from outside of me.
In a sense, that was an asset, because a lot of guys, like including myself, I hung around with guys with money, selling drugs and stuff like that. But I never really had, fucking pot to piss in.
Yeah.
But by the end, I was literally living in a tent in Okotoks in a campsite, right? And so I come in to the program desperate, and I fucking throw myself into service, not really sponsoring guys, but like chairing and pouring coffee, all the things they tell us to do. And, and then like I start my construction company, and then things start getting better. I get my license back. I got the blow box in my truck. I get the girl, and even get married. And then all of a sudden it feels like recovery really worked for me, and I got all the things that society told me that I'm supposed to get. And then I become so sick. But like, it's kind of a mental twist, because it seems like recovery's done everything that it's supposed to do. And it's made me kind of like this, look like a normal person in society. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I start throwing myself into work, even though I'm like so spiritually sick, and I'm just up and down, hot and cold, good weeks, bad weeks. Like, I'm all over the fucking place, still showing up to a few meetings. But in my mind, it feels like, well, yeah, like this is working because I have the things. And fucking then I'm drunk. And then I continued this cycle for like a year. I would throw myself back in, I'd find a new sponsor, do another 5, get some relief, and then go back to what I was doing, showing up to 1 or 2 meetings a week and not sponsoring guys. And I didn't even know what a defect of character really was until I met Bill, to be honest. Because like, it's very short in the book, and nobody ever explained it to me.
Yeah.
Like, I heard defects of character, and I just thought, fuck, yeah, that's like anger. You're not supposed to do that. And so I'll try not to do that. And then I started to, self-will my defects of character, which just fucking creates even more turmoil within me somehow.
Yeah.
And, having God remove my defects of character is a very different process than just trying not to do those things anymore, right?
Well, it's like trying not to drink, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, the problem with me and anger is I really, really love it, man. And more often than not, like, last couple conversations, I've been bringing this up a lot. Probably the only thing that's still selfish within myself that I'm apt to give it up is my humor. My humor is can be very sick, and I love it. And it's all about me, right? When I tell a joke, or I say something or do something, it's really outside of the crowd. So I'll say something in a group that's for me to make me laugh. And if you laugh, that's a byproduct. That's great, but it's about me. So being in a relationship, you get the hand burnt a couple of times. What I like doing, and maybe I shouldn't say this on here, but I'm going to say it anyway. So what I like doing is, so like we'll be, like me and my girlfriend will be in public and, like for example, we were in, I think it was Winners, and she just got out of the change room, and she'll say something to me, and I'll be like, "Don't you ever say that to me in public," and I'll do it in front of everybody, kind of like I'm abusive. And the joke is that I would absolutely never do that, and I never have done that, right? But I just find it so funny because like what people are thinking, what is the reaction, and that's the type of shit I do, dude. And my whole life is scattered with doing. I'll do shit like that in my career. I'll do all over the place. And sometimes I get my hand burnt and sometimes I don't, right? So the difference between that and anger is like the last time I really blew up is I threatened a guy on site. I blew up twice in 1 week. And the first time I blew up was in a business meeting. It wasn't program related. It was career related. And actually Bill was there for this. And I absolutely lost my fucking mind, bro. The problem is that once I let the cat out of the bag, much like a drink, I couldn't reel her back in. So from that point to the point I lost it again on him, I was losing my mind. So the problem is that once I let it out of the bag and I think about anger and I'm about to do it, there's no alarm bells comes in. Vaguely sense I wasn't being any too smart, bro. I don't think about, I might lose my job, I might smack up a car, whatever. Right? So the gravity of the defective character is very, very great. This isn't I came in here and worked on the biggest problem, the substance, and now I'm fucking free of that. It's like, no, I got rid of the substance, which is a manifestation of the real problem at hand. Now I'm here working on the real fucking problem that's been dogging me since I came out of the womb. Right? Now it's like I could get rid of the substance to actually work on what I'm meant to be working on here in the program. That's the difficulty. A couple of things that Bill talked about that I want to touch upon is when we talk about this success, we talk about this failure. And the fears, as far as I'm concerned, there's 5 deep-rooted fears. The fears work on the deep-rooted, they work on the circumstantial, they work on the irrational, right? So for example, irrational would be, me thinking about a child dying, which is very devastating, but I don't have fucking children. Do you get what I'm saying? Yeah. How irrational that is. Why am I thinking about that? But, when I'm full blown, I'm really more driven by fear than I am by anything else. And the irrational are the most painful. If I work on the deep rooted, which is health, relationship, reputation, career, and finance, I bring God into those 5, then the irrational dissipate. They start to revert. They're gone, right? Or very few of them. And when they do crop up, I could see the sane from the insane. I could differentiate the true from the false. But then the circumstantial is just step 10. Like, I have to make a call tomorrow. I got to go into work tomorrow. I got to deal with my boss, and it's not going to be overly great. That's what I have that process for. But when I look at a fear of success and a fear of failure, that's really a fear of reputation. It's not that I think to myself that I'm a success, so now everybody's watching me, or I'm a failure. What does everybody think of me? It's actually about you. It's what do you think when I fail or I succeed, right? When I fail, you think I'm a loser, but now when I succeed, I got to keep it up. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So that's the real difficulty. A lot of these fears are built upon reputation. Probably one of the biggest thing for me in realizing how to get along in the world was, I always thought that people, we talked about the genes, but, like what kind of woman I was with, what kind of job did I have, what kind of car did I drive. And I'd be the kind of guy, I'd tell you all those things within 10 minutes of meeting you, much like the character. I had nothing else to give you, right? Thinking that you actually gave a shit. See, the thing is that people don't care. People don't care what you do. They don't care what you drive because they're more concerned about what they do and what they drive. Have you ever seen a conversation of two men just built into the world of the material, where one will talk about the holiday trailer, then the other will talk about his holiday trailer and his new truck, and the other guy will talk about how he's getting a new truck and a new promotion. The other guy says he doesn't work because he has his own business. You know, and it's just like every time the guy says something, the conversations, because there's no flow, conversation dies and the other guy says what he's, and that is the world of the material. Like, you know, quite often, I mean, if you want to learn anything about character defects, I mean, go to a meeting or really go to one of the houses. You're seeing like new guys. They're like walking over compensations. They burnt their life down to the ground, right? They got to find pride somewhere. You used to be a fly in the wall, man. You listen to those conversations, you hear what's going on.
Yeah.
And you'll see yourself all over the place. Yeah. The great thing is that you don't have to do it, right? You know, you just get to watch people do these things.
Right.
You know, the problem is the world of the material and why it never worked out, why the shine wears off, is because I am putting way too much depth into those material things. Like my whole life and everything about it is in that one thing. Like once I buy this, once I get that, it's over. It is the final end and aim of life. I can't see past it. I could only see to it, right? So it only makes sense that I'm putting way more depth into these things that eventually it's going to wear off because it was never intended for that. You know, a nice car or a good relationship, you know, is in the pieces. It's a piece of the fabric in the fabric of life. It's not the whole goddamn fabric. It's not the whole thing, you know? That's what happens is that it easily blows over to the point where I'm goddamn disgusted and now I'm stuck with the payments, these types of things, right? Like when I was chatting to that one guy who was dealing with the psychosis there, we were chatting and, you know, he really likes GM trucks and I said, you know, you are the Denali, right? That's how it goes. You are the Denali. What's his name? Whatever his name is, you know, you put right next to it Denali as he signs out as, you know, as he signs anything, right? And that's the problem. That's the issue, is that is my very being. So when I can sidestep these types of things with God, when the material doesn't, you know, try and fill the hole, that's where these things work out to be a byproduct of who I am. And only then can I actually understand who I am? Because now I'm not subjected to do all these things as per society, which when we talk about society, it's, you know, in these conversations we could really condemn society. But you have to understand that there are hundreds and thousands of people in this city alone that are getting by as per society.
Yeah.
You know, I know guys who have had the same job for 10 years and they're still fucking grateful for that one job. There are people who can do it. As per the alcoholic, there's absolutely no fucking way. It's not society is wrong. It's that we are byproducts of a defective way of thinking, taking society as selfishly and self-centeredly as we can. Now, can other people in society take what we have and benefit from it? Absolutely. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, as per the alcoholic, can't go by societal rules. And it's very easy to come in here, do a little bit of work, and then because you know what? I mean, you know, the more women I'm with, I get a pat on the back. The more money I make, I get society gives me a pat on the back. Buy that new watch and buy that new car or that new house, you will be a better man for it. Right? Once we understand that all that's nonsense, that's where I can actually wear what I want to wear. And I could do what I want to do. You know, hobbies, career, whatever the case may be. That's where I could blaze my own path. And I'm not, you know, politically and all those other things, I could get into who is Jesse. And that, as per the work that we're doing, as per everything that we're talking about, that is the biggest benefit for me in my own life. And that's very attractive. I think that that's a very big piece of how I get guys. Because you got to remember that these guys aren't necessarily listening to what I'm saying. They don't really have the capacity to do that. A lot of these guys are attracted. Now, it could be the whole deportment shouts new prospect, I'm a man with a real answer. That's definitely a big piece of it. But there's another attraction. These guys are only seeing in the world of the material. So, you know, clean cut, things that you're wearing, things that you're driving. A lot of these things attract guys. Not only does this guy have a polished message, but he has these other societal things that I think that are so important. Little does he know that that's a byproduct that means absolutely fuck all for sobriety.
Right.
Also fuck all for happiness. Like it's funny. I remember my sponsor once said that, you know, because he was in a position where he had everything. He was married, had a beautiful home, 2 cars in the driveway, great job. She was in a career. And I thought that that's what it was, obviously, right? And he said to me, he said, you know, Because all that takes responsibility. He said there's quite often, I remember being in the rehab center, and there was a lot of bliss on that. The only thing I had was a cell phone bill. There's no responsibility. Because a wife is responsibility, a house is responsibility, even something as a car and a cell phone. These are all responsibilities that the alcoholic does not know how to handle. And it takes a lot of pain to actually understand how to handle a relationship, even maintaining an automobile, you know, these types of things. And it's funny because now, he said that to me years ago. And not as much now, but I remember the first couple of years of my sobriety, I would quite often think about the little responsibility I had and a lot of the freedom I had in that.
I think what you just described there too, it's like why we have such a hard time being in a relationship with someone. Because you only got so much to talk about. Like, you can only talk about your truck for so long. You can only tell the war stories for so long. And then eventually you run out of shit to talk about because you're not actually dealing with the inner stuff. And then the chick's like, what happened to the guy that you were? And you had all these great things to talk about. Now you got nothing.
Interesting.
And that, you know, that happens within 6 months. And then the chick's like, who is this guy? You know, he's just a fucking locked up asshole that doesn't talk to me anymore. Because he's got nothing, right?
I mean, a relationship has to be deep. That's the only way.
Right.
You, like, for example, me and Kelly, the amount of and you know what, ebbs and flows, man. If I'm going to tell you that we're in deep conversation 24/7, you can call me a goddamn liar because that's what's happening. Yeah, you're a liar. Right, because that's what's happening. But the last couple of days, and we will talk about, and I'll just tell you right now, what we are talking about is homosexuality in Greek culture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fairly deep topic to be talking about.
Right.
And maybe uncomfortable, but we love uncomfortable conversations. It's not, like I said, we don't do it all the time. Last 3 days, we've just been on point on the gambit, politically, whatever, just talking about absolutely whatever and getting really deep knowledge from each other. Not to say she's giving me pearls, not to say I'm giving her pearls, but all we're doing is just really opening up that wave of communication. I'll tell you, we cut out the phone when we go to bed.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that needs to be discussed in the day, that's a perfect time. Because a lot of these conversations, they need tact, eh? You know, all of a sudden she brings up something. Ideally, if she feels the need to bring up something in the day, she's already angry at something. Right. And so that's how she's going to back it. And vice versa, same with me. Yeah. Especially because I'm way more aggressive than she is. So, you know, we have that time, like an hour or two, to chat about whatever needs to be chatted about, almost as like an inventory style type of thing. And if it's not anything that we need to chat about, then it could just be the day and what we thought about. Starting to get into hobbies. I mean, we're going to get our gun licenses and we're going to start cooking classes and stuff like that.
Right on.
It's like, you could, this is supposed to be your partner.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and if it's not a unit, because, I mean, when I said that I love this woman, that was a commitment. That meant that we were a unit. I didn't say I love you as per societal, you know, this erotic, possessive love, that type of idea. I meant that we are a unit moving forward. I mean, her mother, she had a very deep loss in her life, and we revisited that. Because now it's about to get fucked up really bad.
Yeah.
And, you know, are you committed? And I said, yes, we are a unit. So, you know, going through that experience, it's never wavered. It's much like, you know, the step one. It's never wavered. I mean, once you have a gut level concession in the innermost self, it doesn't waver. It's there. It's fucking supplanted.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the same thing with this commitment. Never once has there been the opportunity for one of us to leave except for that moment and another moment before. There was another moment before I slept at Bill's house. I took a couple days. Right. And then I made the decision that this is a unit and we're doing this. Then I made the decision again because we were so new together. It was so crazy. And I said, no, I'm sticking by you. This is it. Yeah. So once you have that, it doesn't waver, bro. So if there's no out, then you have to work through it no matter what. Right. You know, so it's the same with the program.
So I want to say, so you had just talked about the unwavering deep level concession of step one with the substance. Yeah. And how this kind of translate into your relationship and then the commitment. Yeah. Well, in step one, for me to lose that deep level concession, pride has to be all over it, right? And if
pride has to reassert itself.
No, well, that's what I mean. Yeah. Pride will reassert itself, and it'll disconnect me from that deep level concession, and it'll delude my thought, and maybe I think I can drink again.
But not always, though.
Not always.
Not always.
But the point is if we lay off on the spiritual program of action, we can we can get intercepted by pride, and pride can lead us down banana peel trail. So in our relationships, all three of us are in relationships where we're committed to the people we're in, and I think what it takes is the absence of self and a lot of vulnerability. And through my life as not wanting to be vulnerable, although it was something that I always really wanted, but it was one of the hardest things to ever do with people because I'm giving you the edge. And it's like I'm naked. If I get really vulnerable and I tell you my truth, so like with you and Kelly in your relationship, and Tommy, you with Sue, and me with Jilly, I want to ask, like, what is the core that keeps you guys working together and growing and learning? And does pride, or the reassertion of pride or self, does it disconnect you? And what do you guys do to maybe bring that back on? Because I know for me, I've learned a lot of tools in vulnerability, and pride can reassert itself, and it actually disconnects us, and that unit can be split. But with the commitment, it comes back together. But it's a lot of work too, right? It just doesn't happen because you fucking want it to. Like, so can you guys give me a little bit of like how you're able to keep that strong? And
the big thing is women and men work, and they're wired very differently. And it's easy to get into the prideful, like, what the fuck does it matter? Or like, why are you even asking me this question? Why can't you just let me be? Like, it's easy to fall into that. Like, why aren't you like a guy? Well, I don't want a guy friend. You know, I'm with a woman for a reason. And, you know, you look into studies, and women and men are wired very differently. They operate differently. Their brains work differently. And I think it's important to understand that. I mean, Bill showed me a video that just fucking helped me so much. Like, I don't always have to solve Sue's problems for her, but I have to be there for her, and I have to be able to listen. I have to just be able to be present. And that is all she's asking for. The more I try and solve her problems for her, and she's like, well, no, that's not what I'm looking for. It's like, well, what the fuck? I got to go and hop in my truck and I leave. Instead, it's just like to be there and be present. And it's a fucking hard task because there's something about me that just wants to fucking take off when things get heated. Yeah. And when you step into that and you just, you know, you stand guard basically, and you take all of my energy is fucking in that moment with her, even though I want to take off. As soon as I start practicing that, it becomes more of a connection rather than like two positive magnets trying to fucking connect, right? And I don't know, that's something that I've been really working on, and just being open. Like Jesse was talking about, I'm a total introvert, you know, naturally. And I grew up in a household where nobody fucking communicated. Nobody talked about emotions. A lot of people did, right? And so that just didn't come naturally. That came with a lot of fucking pain and practice. And like you talking about just like the little things, just talking about your day, that was almost impossible for me. But through practice. And I actually have to, like, a little bit of self-will that stuff. Of course, I've brought this stuff to God, and it's helped. But I have to take some action on it too. I have to step into the uncomfortable place where I don't want to go once in a while. And it's for her, you know. It has to be about Sue. It can't just be like, what do I need to do to make this better? Well, what does Sue need now, right?
Well, the will definitely has a natural purpose. Yeah. All these things, I mean, when it comes to aggression, when it comes to lust, all these things have a natural purpose. And God allows us to get there. And so, of course, when it comes to the will, why we have such strong wills, that's utilized originally to do the 12 steps of the program, right? That's where we utilize that will. And I like what you're talking about, because that's exactly where I started. I understood that I was a fixer. You give me a problem. Okay, so you tell me the problem, you give it to me in bullet points. Like, not, you know, let's not elaborate. Let's get to the fucking point, and then let's fix it, right? I want to spend 5 minutes on your problem and the next hour on your solution, where it's the exact opposite. She wants to spend, you know, a solid hour, maybe an hour and a half, 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, that type of, and, but the problem is that you know, women tend to be a little bit more emotional. And there is a presence. Because at first, like, you have to be fully present, because I am, like, gnawing at the bit listening to this. And that's where it started. Understanding the love languages for us has helped. My love language is acts of service. Right? So
Yeah.
scratch my back, that type of shit.
Right.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. That's how I feel love. For her, it's words of affirmation, which is the exact opposite
Right.
of mine. Right? So really what happens is that if there is, like, so the first time I was ever vulnerable, because this is the area that I was very hard and fast lines. This is a relationship. This isn't a relationship. And it took me a long time to really let go of those things and let the relationship go where it has to go. And so the first time I was actually vulnerable, very funny, is it was Christmas time. And there was a song that came on. It was Elvis singing Noel. And I started crying. And it was like, truthfully, it could have been anything. It could have been anything by that point that I was going to tear up on. And then that was maybe 6 months into the relationship, 9 months into the relationship. That was the first time. I've only cried so many times. That's not my thing. So then once that happened, we really started opening up the gambit on vulnerability. And the problem with vulnerability for me is when I'm vulnerable, I feel the need to overcompensate that vulnerability. So I got to be very careful of that, because pride doesn't, same with the drink. When I would think about the drink when insanity still prevailed in my life, there's no alarm bells. I vaguely sense I'm being any too smart. Or when I think about the drink, I'm drunk, right? So when I think about pride, I'm fucking prideful. When it's almost as quickly as that happens. So all that comes with presence, of course. The biggest thing is the exact same thing I said before when, me and Bill were off the defective tangent. We kept up the action. So no matter what happens in the relationship, I still keep up the action. So that would be, hers is words of affirmation. So I keep up that action. But I also still walk in my own love language, right? Whatever your love language is that's how you speak. So I naturally speak in acts of service.
Right.
That means I'll clean the house. That means I'll clean the cars. That means I'll fix something, those types of things.
Right.
So I still will speak in that love language with the action, but then also her own love language as well. The other one is time. It's for myself, it's quality time, which I always thought that meant staying with somebody, but we actually just did tests about a week ago to see what was what. And she ended up realizing, because there's a lot of times, like when we're talking and she'll be on her phone, I'll tell her cut the shit out right away, or she'll be doing something when we're spending time that I won't like. She just thought I was being a dick the whole time, but it's actually a part of my love language, to where I get very offended when she does these types of things. Understanding who the other person is, for sure. That's huge. Always keeping up the action no matter what happens.
Right.
I will always take care of these things that I had mentioned before, because it's who I am. Now there's times where I want to just say, fuck it, it's over. Like me doing the work, right? Because it is a lot of work. It's almost as if it's never ending.
Yeah.
There's always new depths. Like a lot of guys, when they come in, that's the first thing they want is a relationship or a job. And, I often say if I knew what was involved, I would have stayed very clear away from the relationship. Right? I didn't understand how much work was involved.
Right.
But I would say keeping up the action.
So what I want to touch on is, you said you had all of these ideas of what a relationship was and what it wasn't. And you had to let go of a lot of these things so that you could allow the relationship to go where it needed to go. And in the book, it talks about building the true partnership. We had no idea of what a true partnership really was. And a true partnership, I think, in respect to what you're saying, in my own ways too, because I'm kind of old school, right? Jilly's younger than me, and she's got different viewpoints and different ideas of what this looks like. And I come in here with, okay, well, these are kind of your jobs, and these are kind of my jobs, and you kind of should do this for me, and I'll do these things for you, and it's like she's been put perfectly in my path to help smash a lot of these belief systems for me. And I think I've been put in her path to help smash a lot of those belief systems in her, right? And through the vulnerability of actually speaking like honestly and truthful with the absence of pride. Because I know for me, if pride gets in there and I'm gnawing at the bit and I want to fucking talk about what you're fucking talking about, that's not a good place, because I'm present and I'm thinking I know better, right? But I've learned slowly over time that I need to get centered with God before I even start talking. And I got to look at her in the eyes, and I got to actually listen to her words, right? And I have a saying when I work with sponsees, you got to treat this person like a human being. Don't treat her like a woman. Because the deep subconscious ways that I will treat a woman, or that I've learned how to deal with the opposite sex, isn't always conducive to actually building a true partnership, right? So a lot of the tools that I'm learning with her and having that commitment where two people want the same thing, and that's important, right? Because if they don't want the same thing, then it's going to go sideways, right? So it's really important to be vulnerable and keep speaking the truth, because like pride is very subtle and it'll push shit under the carpet, and that shit doesn't go under the carpet and never to be seen again. You're just actually fucking making a pile of dirt that's going to fucking blow up, right? And so for me, I'm learning a lot of these lessons, and it's been great. And after these conversations that are often stepping out of the comfort zone, very scary to go into some of them, I fucking feel really, really good afterwards. Right. Yeah. And then we're more connected. We're more bonded. And a lot of that shit that was kind of bubbling on the surface has been put to bed. And now we can kind of start fresh from that moment and move forward. Sometimes this stuff kind of comes back a bit, but like you said, it's not about... It's always about the action, right? It's always about the action. And sometimes I think in my relationship, sometimes it feels like we're stepping backwards. But when I think about it, I got to look at the facts, right? Because I'm a delusional thinker. I got to look at the facts. And I got to look at the truth about actually what's happened. And yeah, we've taken 3 steps forward and maybe 2 back, but we're still ahead a step. Right? And maybe I take 3 steps forward and 1 back, but I'm still moving forward, right? And to me, that's really important. And the facts need to be addressed, because my brain can make its own facts and I can live in the past. That's really where the 4 absolutes, I don't know if you guys studied the 4 absolutes, but they fucking are making a huge difference in what I'm doing day to day in my relationship. And then I tie those in with the 4 agreements. And these 8 things combined, as I try to work these into my life, have just really, really started changing a lot in my side. And, and I see a lot, and I respect Jilly for doing what she's doing, right? Because she's committed to change, right? And you don't find that. Like, fuck, I've never really seen that.
I want to tell you guys something about what happened in my case, because things were kind of rocky. Like, Sue and I split up for about a year. We separated, right? And then, but it's funny how this fucking program works sometimes, because I had this sponsee call me and things were rough at home, and I fucking gave him point by point exactly what he should be doing, and I was doing none of it. And I just told myself, and I don't know where it came from, I told myself exactly what I needed to do at home. And this is the thing about working with other people. I mean, God comes in, and shit was coming out of my mouth that I was like, whoa, like, where the fuck did that come from? And I was telling him, like, the little things matter, and like all the things that I needed to hear were coming out of my mouth. Right. And then I was able to take that and start to apply it in my life. And it really came out of fucking nowhere. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's wild. It is wild. I mean, like when like there's a whole bunch of ways that they say, one of which they say the vital 6th sense. And that's when, I practice what's on the page in step 10, the actions. Then from there, I get the promises if I continuously do that. The clarity, clearing the channel on a daily basis. But then also it says bring God into every avenue of my life, right? So when I accomplish those things, this vital 6th sense, and I am clear on a daily basis, all sorts of remarkable things follow. Like really what it is, when we chat about, in We Agnostic, we chat about the definition of the agnostic. And it says, on one hand, this man can have deep skepticism, and then on the other hand, he could be enchanted by starlit night. By starlit night.
Right. Yeah.
So, later on in that chapter, it says that, last analysis it may be found was so within him. So the enchantment was actually within him, and so was his power, right? So in step 5, and you go to step 10. If you actually keep on doing the clearing the channel, the actions, all that other shit, you are enchanted 24/7, essentially, because you have now unlocked the power. power that you could utilize, right? So out of everything I've just said, building up to what just happened to you, all sorts of remarkable things can happen, just like that, right? And then what happens is that it's, you're blown away, right, through meditation of the things that you're given, these intuitive thoughts, and you act them in your life while you're still clear. And then all of a sudden you're blazing a path that you never would have in the first place. Then once that becomes a working part of your mind, then it's almost like the whole thing is locked in place.
Yeah, and I always tell guys, like, stop trying to figure everything out, right? And you just got to focus on the process, because it seems like everything you're trying to figure out is going to get figured out if you clear that channel, right? Like, you don't have to dwell on everything anymore. And it's hard to explain that to someone until they've experienced it, right?
Well, the process is I'm such a fucking stickler on the process, man. Like, that's really all I care about, and that's all I want them to care about. Because that is what you jump off into the world of the spirit. That's how you do it. Is you get that process, you get that thing worked into your life. Nothing else matters but that. Once you get that, then we'll chat. Then we'll chat about everything else, right? Wow, yeah. But that's a very, very big part.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I just took a guy through step 4, and so I'm going through the process of step 4, and I know he's going to put his own little flair on it. He's going to put some, in the effects the 5's effects he's probably going to put pride in there. Doesn't belong. He's going to put maybe, you know what I mean? They always do that. They always try and make it their own. But I say, like, and I'm very aggressive, borderline abusive with these guys, and making sure that it stays, because only that, if you get a consistent process, only then can you get consistent results. Now you putting your own fucking flair on it every damn time, you're not getting consistent results off that. So in the effects I want it of importance, right? So I mean, if it's ambitions that have affected this situation the most, and that's first, and you go from there, right? So only then can you get consistent results.
And what I like about what we're talking about is it's essentially it's step 10 where we're at today, right? And the promises in the book for step 10, as we go to the meetings into the rooms, everyone's always focused on the substance. People get a year sober, they get through their first set of steps, we pat them on the ass, and we say, thanks, you got this, and you're on your way. And I always say, well, where are you on your way to? You're on your way to a relapse.
Yeah.
Because we're not focused on what we're talking about here today.
Yeah.
And if you read the promises in step 10, it starts out with, being aware of self. That's actually what has caused my failure, is these insecurities of self, that I try to draw emotional goods from you, or I want to manage to make me happy. And I identify those things, and like you said, we bring God in to all these other aspects of our life. We talk to somebody, right? So you can tell me, what you see. Am I acting in self? Or what damaged or unsaleable good am I trying to use today that's not serving me or anybody else? And then it says, love and tolerance is our code. We have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. Because the first fight is always within my own head. And if I can clear that fight within my head, then I sure the fuck ain't gonna fight you. And if I ain't fighting you, then I'm placed in a position of neutrality within my own head. And then if I'm okay here, then I place myself in a position of neutrality within my fellows. The problem has been removed following the process, the directions. I haven't even sworn off. And I've been removed. My selfish self-centeredness gets removed through the process, right? And to me, all of those promises are about me getting these gifts and clearing the channel and having that flow if I follow directions carefully, it says. And Tommy and I are doing that big book study, and Jesse, you and I have, and we're all about the directions, right? And I like how you said you got to get the process, you got to get the steps, you got to get I don't mean the 12 steps, I mean the fucking directions that are laid out in the book, as per the 12 steps. And then you said, then we can talk about everything, but we got to get the directions. And I always say, you don't need to get through your first set of steps and just have this theory of God and then self-will principles into your life. Because I think a lot of people self-will principles into their lives, and they try. But the motives aren't always correct, right? And it says in step 7, takes most of us a fucking long time to have humility is something to be desired. But it doesn't have to take a long time. You follow the process in that 10, Sometimes you got to go to inventory and do a full inventory, like a step 4 and a step 5. You got to do some of this other shit. But what's always the result of at the end of the step 10 process? It's always the principle. So you're living your life. Every day is a day where we must bring the vision of God's will into all of our activities. That's what step 10 does. Fucking flat out. And then we feel that flow, that presence, that conscious companionship with God because we're connected. Right? We're dumping out the shit that blocks us all the time.
That's why it always drives me nuts when you hear in a meeting 10, 11, 12 are maintenance steps.
Yeah.
Maintenance. Like, is there anything about your first year of recovery that you want to fucking maintain? Are you kidding me?
For sure.
Like, this is all about growing and being more connected and learning more about myself so that I can clear more. Because, you know, spirituality, you don't need to add anything. Like, everything, you just got too much. You got to get rid of the stuff, right? And, like, I have no idea coming in how much of me I got to get rid of to clear that channel, right? So, anyway, Jesse, awesome to have you, buddy. I'm really glad you took some time and came and did this with us today. Is there anything that you want to add before we wrap it up?
Yeah, just quickly. Bill's talking about step 10 and the promises, and also in there it says the problem's been removed, right? A lot of people don't understand that. So, like, you know, the difference between us here, you know, 2020, 1939 is today there's a lot of avenues a guy could go down, more avenues than ever before. And a lot of these avenues are through the medical fraternity, right? And so a guy could easily get tripped up in things like, you know, seeing a psychiatrist, getting on pills, these types of things, smart recovery, all this other fucking complete nonsense. The clear difference between us and the medical fraternity is the medical fraternity will diagnose the symptoms of alcoholism and how they manifest it. The problem is that the manifestation and the glaring symptoms have been there maybe even 2 decades, 3 decades. So they're very, very severe. Every guy I work with has been diagnosed with one thing or another. And through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the manifestation is dissipated. The difference between us and medical fraternity is we go right down to the root causes and conditions. So we don't pay attention to any of the glaring symptoms. We go right down to the root causes and conditions. Because of that, the symptoms dissipate. So when you look at that relapse cycle that I brought up before, what heads the relapse cycle is the restless irritable discontent. If you stall that out or you solve that issue, the rest of the cycle cannot be fulfilled. That is how you run into sobriety and long-term grounded sobriety. So even for me, do I get restless irritable discontent? Yeah, absolutely I do. But it comes in spurts. It's not all 3 in full fucking blown. On page 151, it talks about the 4 horsemen. And every day of my life, I would wake up full-blown alcoholic.
Right.
In terror, fear, right? You know?
Yeah.
And that was my life. And so I have a process to solve that, clear the channel, and get back to natural, because the restless irritable discontent, it permeates human affair. That's just the way it is. But it comes in spurts. I get spurts of frustration. I get spurts of irritability. That's not fucking full-blown. Right? I get spurts of discontent. Discontent for me, I will take restless and irritable all day long to discontent. Discontent is nothing's right. Nothing will ever be right. And it's like a cross, it's like a stain on the very fabric of my existence. I, for my whole life, have never been able to shake that. Only through drugs and alcohol at first, and now through the power of God in this process.
Right.
I think that that's very important for people to understand that this process does work. It has worked for all 3 of us. But the substance is like really, I'm going to say a solid quarter of the full thing.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But of course, you know, we can't toss it aside saying that it's nothing. But we could also toss it aside and say that it's nothing, because once I get out of the woods of that, I mean, I'm in a lifelong of woods, man. You know what I mean? And it's not all bad, though. I mean, I don't wake up every morning thinking I'm gonna drink. That's not what this deal is. I could go to a bar and have wings because it's wing night. I could go anywhere a free man may go without disaster.
Right.
I've walked into a life infinitely more satisfying than the life I lived before. And that's fact, and that's as per this process. One thing I just want to touch on very briefly is probably one of the biggest things that's been huge about sobriety and being able to make God-centered decisions is based upon, in step 3, it chats about decisions based on self always later place us into a position to be heard. Me and Bill understood exactly what that was. And this is why we talk about pillars. This is why we talk about God-centered pillars, is because these guys have the ability to keep us grounded from making a self-centered decision. And if I tack on enough self-centered decisions in my life, I'm in a lot of pain. And there's no anesthetic. You got to remember, the anesthetic is the solution to my problems is the substances that we're talking about, whatever that substance may be. And if I don't have God making these self-centered decisions, then I'm left on the operating table without an anesthetic, because there is no booze anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
And also too, this gut level concession. Bill was chatting about this. I want to end on this. Gut level concession. Guys can have that. Guys can have a concession to the innermost self. They could be dry as fuck for 30 years. Why do they throw a pistol in their mouth instead of drinking? That's how powerful a gut level concession can be, man. It's a very powerful thing. But if it's not followed up with the work that we've chatted about here, then that's what you end up. A pistol in your fucking mouth.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that brings us to the end. Bill, you got anything?
I'd just like to say thanks to Jesse for coming out. It's been a little while since we had a good chat like this, and I don't know, we'll chat about maybe bringing you in more regularly, because I just think it's an amazing chat with us three here, and bring a lot of value to people, bring a lot of value to me, and just awesome to have you here. And that's it, Tom.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of things, and I think we could go into a lot more depth in a lot of things. And so yeah, we'll definitely do this more often. So yeah, if you guys resonate with anything that was mentioned here today, just follow or share this with somebody who you think might benefit from it. You can find me at table40coach.com or on Instagram at table40.coach. And Bill, where you at?
I'm at all platforms at billward.life, and that's YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, my website. Another thing I'd like to mention is Tommy and I have an email, and we'll deal with any questions or concerns or anything you want to say. You want to give us props for what we're doing, and the email is fosdfl@gmail.com. It stands for Fellowship of the Spirit, Designed for Living. So fosdfl@gmail.com. Send us your comments or questions or concerns, and we'll be happy to get back to you.
There you have it, guys. We'll see you next week.